Good news in history. September 18, 187 years ago today, the Anti-Corn Law League was established in England by the economic savvy liberals who understood that protectionism is immoral and useless in benefiting the economy. The League, led by Richard Cobden and heavily influenced by economist Daniel Riccardo, succeeded in seeing the Corn Laws of 1818 abolished, laying out the first laizzez-faire arguments against mercantilism to be heard in Europe and establishing, for all time, the case study on their use. Read more about this successful political movement in 1838, a meeting of the Anti-Corn Law League. The Corn Laws imposed tariffs on imported cereals into England under the guise of protecting the domestic production corn meant any grain at the time. As in all economic activity, the Corn Law tariffs had two effects, which renowned French economic journalist Friedrich Bastiat described famously as one which is seen and one which is unseen. The tax on imported wheat meant that producers of the more expensive domestic cereals were able to keep their jobs and production methods intact, a perceived good by the British Parliament. That which was unseen was manifold. They resulted in a rise in the price of bread at a time when British factory owners were trying to reduce costs. It resulted in food scarcity among the poor as bakers and merchants could no longer import cheaper grains from abroad even in times of shortages. It stalled English farmers from further agricultural innovations or moving into other industries, having a portion of their income all but guaranteed. It also decreased the demand on manufactured goods, as suddenly the lower and middle classes were paying more for food they had gotten for less prior to the Corn Laws enactment. Lastly, as organizer Cobden saw it, it created unnecessary animosity between nations who might otherwise live in greater harmony if trade were partaken freely. The lessons of the Corn Law were never lost to history, but rather must be reiterated every time the political administration attempts to re-establish protectionism and mercantilism according to naive desires of obtaining that good which is seen, the protection of a domestic market, and ignoring that which is unseen, burden imposed on the rest of the economy in exchange. More good news on this day in history. George Washington laid the first cornerstone of the Capitol building with the Pennsylvania Tiffany Co. was founded in New York City in 1880. Daniel David Palmer administered the first chiropractic adjustment in 1880. The Columbia Phonograph Broadcasting System made its broadcasting debut through its network of overseeing radio stations. Later it took the name CBS. 1910, when President Reagan announced the destruction of nuclear warheads by US and USSR. 1988, and Ted Turner, the innovative founder of the first cable news network CNN, donated $1 billion to the UN to create the United Nations Foundation, a charity that works to help the world's poor and preserve the environment. 1989, and several years ago today, A Streetcar Named Desire, the film based on the play by Tennessee Williams, premiered in New York City. Starring Vivian Leigh, Marlon Brando, Kim Hunter, and Carl Malden, the film tells the story of a Mississippi Southern belle, Blanche DuBois, who, after encountering a series of personal losses, seeks refuge with her sister and brother-in-law in a dilapidated New Orleans apartment building. A Streetcar Named Desire pub domain. Tennessee Williams collaborated with Oscar Saul and Elia Kazan on the screenplay. It received Oscar nominations in 10 other categories, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay, and won Best Supporting Actor Malden, Best Supporting Actress Hunter, and Best Art Direction Richard Day, George James Hopkins, making it the first film to win in 2 of the acting categories. In 1939, A Streetcar Named Desire was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. In his 2020 autobiography, Apropos of Nothing, director Woody Allen praises every aspect of the production. The movie Streetcar is for me total artistic perfection. It's the most perfect confluence of script, performance, and direction I've ever seen, he wrote. 1934 years ago today, a party of explorers from the Washburn-Langfordone expedition traveled down the Five-Hole River and entered the Upper Giza Basin, where they found an extraordinary natural feature they would call Old Faithful. Nathaniel P. Lanford, the expedition leader, wrote in his journal of the day's discovery, noting it spouted at regular intervals 9 times during our stay, the columns of boiling water being thrown from 90 to 125 feet at each discharge, which lasted from 15 to 20 minutes. We gave it the name Old Faithful. Painting by Albert Bissell, 1881. First things first, irregular intervals at which it discharges are due to it being separated from all the plumbing of the Upper Giza Basin's features. Intervals between eruptions can range from 1 to 10 minutes, averaging 6.5 minutes in 1939, and slowly increasing to an average of 90 minutes apart a day, due in theory to earthquakes altering the subterranean water table or other features. In the early days of Yellowstone National Park, Old Faithful was often used as a laundry
with one employee writing Old Faithful is sometimes degraded by being made a laundry. Garments placed in the crater during quiescence are ejected thoroughly washed when the eruption takes place.
Sheridan's men in 1882 found that linen and cotton fabrics were uninjured by the action of the water, but woolen clothes were torn to shreds. 1,877 years ago today, Margaret Chase Smith became the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate.
For more than 3 decades, she served as a role model for women aspiring to national politics. She was also the first woman elected to the U.S.
House of Representatives and the first to have her name placed in nomination for the U.S. presidency of a major party. Senator Smith bravely denounced the communist witch hunt of McCarthyism at a time when others feared that speaking out would ruin their careers. On June 1, 1980, she delivered her courageous 8-minute declaration.